What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Remote Real Estate Investor. I'm Michael Album, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Emil Shore.
And today, Emil and I are going to be chatting about, does it make sense to start with single family or with multifamily? So let's get into it. All right, Emil, how's it going, man? It's been a minute.
Good, dude. How you doing?
Hanging in there. I got a couple of refinances that just closed today that I'm working on for a long time, so really excited about that. So I'm going to be redeploying some capital here into some short-term rentals. How's the triplex sailing? All smooth?
Yeah, I haven't received an email in weeks, so that's my favorite kind of news. Is no news from my property manager.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, just
oftentimes.
Yeah,
a good sign.
Yeah. We've got tenants in place. They're all fresh. No bad news. So fingers crossed it keeps staying that way.
Sweet. Well, today, man, I want to talk about if it makes sense to start with single family or multifamily as you're just getting started. And you were someone that started with single families, right?
I did. My first investment property, or actually any property I purchased, it was an investment property. It was a single family in Jacksonville, Florida in 2017.
Okay. And now you're a seasoned investor. You've got 6 units, I think. You've done some multifamily.
Yes, sir.
Should you have done it differently?
I am happy I started with single family. I think starting with one tenant, one home, one unit is the ideal way to start. I don't think this is like one of those there's a better or worse way. I think it's what is your appetite for pain? Do you want to like learn really fast and deal with a lot of craziness at first, or do you want something slow and steady and just like an easier on-ramp? So for me, having a full-time job at the time, starting with a single family was perfect. It was like I got to learn how to manage a property manager, different things that can go wrong. It was just an easier transition for me, and I'm happy I started that way.
Yeah. It's funny you say appetite for pain. I think we just want to be careful to not give people the impression that single families can't be a highway on-ramp to pain, because, my first investment was also a single family, and it was like the most painful one ever. So I think it's you can have it either way. You can have horrible experiences with single family. You can have amazing experiences with multifamily. So it really just depends on, I think, how the asset is structured and where you're buying it.
Yeah.
But
you could have, let's say you bought a quadplex, right? You had the same thing, but times 4. So it's just like your percentage. No, actually, I don't know. You could look at it either way. You could say, well, I have 4 units. My likelihood of 100% pain is much less likely than so.
Exactly.
I think personally, just easier to go with one, learn the ins and outs. Again, you're learning, especially if you're remote investing, you're learning how to do that. You're learning how to deal with a property manager. I think overall, it's just easier with one.
Okay. And let's dive a little bit deeper. I mean, talk to us a little bit about, like, when you say learning the ins and outs, what does that mean? What did you learn from investing in that single family that then better prepared you to invest in that triplex? Yeah, and what was totally brand new? Like, what caught you off guard with the triplex?
That's a good question. I think it's just, if you've never owned your own home, there's all these moving parts of a home that you're not really like, I don't know how an HVAC works. How does plumbing work? What's the main line? What's all these things I've even forgotten already as we're on this podcast. But like all these parts of a home that you don't really know. I think that's one, just getting more familiarized with all the moving parts.
Does it matter that you didn't know how an HVAC works? I mean, you don't know how a car engine works. I mean, I assume, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you know how a car engine works?
Here's the difference. A lot of things go wrong with your property. I don't say a lot, but things go wrong, right? And it's on you to know how much does it cost to get that fixed, right? Like if someone said, hey, your condenser broke, we're going to replace it for $10,000. How would you know if that's accurate or not?
I gotcha. I see what you're saying. Okay.
So that's one thing.
But it's the same thing with car. If you take your car to the mechanic and they say, oh, your continuum transfunctioner is broken, we're going to charge you $10,000 to fix it. Similar concept, right? I guess you have to chat with other people.
Well, my first car was a $6,000 used car. So I would just say, okay, you guys keep it. I'll go get a new, you know what I mean? It's like, it's also in most cases, less dollars in, right? So A multifamily is going to be more dollars in. You're learning on more dollars versus single family is less dollars in potentially. So less dollars you potentially have on the line to learn.
All right. All right. I'm gonna take a alternative position on that one and push back. I think that you can actually find multifamily in particular markets that are as inexpensive or less than some single family. I mean, there's single family all over the place in the $200,000, $300,000 versus multifamily. You can find properties that are less than. So I think that's a very common misconception that people fall into is, oh, multifamily is automatically more expensive. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case for every market.
Yeah. But then you're potentially putting the cart before the horse, right? You're saying, I'm going to go find a market where it meets this versus you should find a market that you like and then look within that market.
Yep. So you're letting the deal dictate the market or letting the market dictate the deal.
Right. I think it's like some people will I started that way, right? I said, okay, this is how much I want to spend. Which markets kind of fall into that, which is one way. But I don't know if that's the right way. I don't know if it's the wrong way, but I would rather, if I could start it all from scratch, say like, what is the market I want to really invest in? And then secondarily, who is the property manager I want to invest with?
Ooh, that's very well said. And so you're someone that wants to kind of cluster their investments in the same market, it sounds like.
I would. Yeah. I think I've said that like on previous episodes, being scattered across a couple different markets. I think finding one market you like, you're finding good deals, you have a good property manager. Again, to me, that's the key, is finding a good property manager. And it's tough. It's like, how do you find that good property manager without trying several markets, right?
If you get some perspective when you go other places, you realize, oh man, my property manager was amazing, or, well, my property manager kind of sucked.
Right. Well, that's the value of, I think, networking and talking to other people who are doing real estate investing rather than just going solo.
Totally. And I cut you off before to go down this rabbit hole, but you were talking about what the ins and outs were that you actually learned that prepped you to be then a successful multifamily investor.
I don't think I'm a successful multifamily investor. I have one triplex and that's been a big learning experience. I don't know. It was a different learning experience in that I had multiple tenants leave at the same time. Single family, you're not paying a lot of the utility bills, right? So you're learning on the multifamily, like, what are my actual expenses? What do I cover? And how much are they each month? So it's like, yeah, you can estimate and talk to people, but like, it's just things you're going to learn by doing and buying. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Those
are the things that come to mind.
Yep.
And then, how long does your average single family tenant stay versus multifamily? Like, yes, there's stats online, but it's, to me, another one of those things you learn by doing.
Yes, very much so. See, it's so funny. So many of the points you brought up for single family, I agree with and I think are valid, but I had like the opposite experience, and I experienced those things with multifamily. So I've shared on other episodes too, like my first two investments were single family. I had the tenants leave every single year. They did a ton of damage on the way out and I had to go to small claims court. So I was like, oh my God, this sucks. So that's ultimately kind of what led me to multifamily. I was like, oh, I got to do something different. This is not working out. So I had much better luck with multifamily, and that's what I've been focusing on since.
For the record, where are your single family, those two single families you bought?
They were both in California, in Southern California.
Southern California is a tough market for landlords, man.
It very much is.
That I think probably played some into it potentially for you.
I think so. But also, I mean, like, given that I've also purchased two flip properties. One was in Birmingham, Alabama, and the other in Kansas City, KC Mo. And those have been pains in the butts too. And so I think it's not a one size fits all, like you were saying, and it's very much personal preference.
Sure.
But some takeaways that I had from investing in small multifamily, so 2, 3, and 4 units is, and you touched on it earlier, was the likelihood that you have both tenants or all of the tenants having issues or vacancy or causing damage. The statistical likelihood just goes down. And so that's why a lot of people buy multiple properties, because if you have one property, the likelihood of having one vacancy is fairly high. If you have two, that goes down, so on and so forth as you expand your portfolio. And so you can do that and acquire more units and increase the statistical likelihood of success in this case, meaning no vacancy and less repairs with fewer transactions. And so it just becomes easier from a management standpoint and easier from a mental capacity standpoint when you're thinking about, okay, I've got one address to worry about. These are all the things going on there, as opposed to these 5 different addresses to keep track of. And so I think from a small multifamily perspective, like again, those 2 to 4 units, it's fairly similar from a how to own and operate perspective. And I think you nailed it also talking about like the expenses. And so from that perspective, it can be a little bit different in your expense load and what your operating costs look like and who pays what and how often you might have a turn. But the cool thing is the financing is the same. So if you go buy a 1 single family or a 2 to 4 unit and you're getting conventional financing, that's the same, which is really, really cool. So until you make that gap into that 5+ unit space, that it changes into commercial financing.
Right. And that's probably something important to consider here as well. If you're like thinking about multifamily or single family is, well, if you have less time, let's say you want to invest in real estate, but you have less time, right? Multifamily, we know, is valued on how well can you make it perform. It's more like a business rather than, 1 to 4 unit, you're kind of riding the ups and downs of the market to value it, right? It's all sales comps. So maybe if you have more time and you feel like you can manipulate the NOI on that property, get it valued higher to do those things, maybe multifamily makes more sense for you. But maybe if you're, super busy and you want something a little bit more passive, I've just found that my single family has been more passive. My tenants stay longer. And I haven't owned the triplex for a ton of time. It's been 1.5 years, but my tenants stay longer. I hear less things overall is my personal experience with very limited units. So
yeah, I think you make a great point talking about time perspective. I would just add to that if you're just starting out and taking on a multifamily investment, finding something that has a value add component might be tough. And it really comes down to like, I know I was way in over my head with my first multifamily value add because I just feel like you don't know what you don't know. And so you're jumping in, like you mentioned, to this multiple unit situation where all of these things are new versus trying to figure it out with 1 tenant and 1 property and 1 door where everything is still new. And so I think that it's often an easier pill to swallow. But if someone is super gung-ho and wants to take risks and has the financial wherewithal to back it up and is like, yeah, I know I'm gonna learn lessons, but I want to learn lessons hard and fast, multifamily can be a really great way to do that. Value add, now layering that on top of that, is another way to learn even harder and faster and more expensively. So if someone's just starting out, I think, and they're gung-ho about multifamily, I think a turnkey multifamily can be a really great way to go. Yeah.
That's something interesting you kind of bring up there. Trauma to me, not trauma, but like recollection of this triplex, my first multifamily is when you're wrong on your calculated repair costs and all that, it compounds, right? So if you have 3 units you got to turn and you think it was $5,000 each and you were wrong, it multiplies faster than, the kitchen on my single family I thought was going to be $5,000, ended up being $6,000, right? Like you just multiply it if you're wrong multiple times.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, but it's good. That's a good learning experience that, people should go through.
Yeah. Well, I would argue I would have preferred to have someone else go through it and then tell me about it. And then I could learn from their mistakes, which is why we started the Roofstock Academy, by the way. We talked about, hey, this is purpose built for investors by investors for all the crap that we had to go through that we wish other people had told us ahead of time.
True. And it's also valuable in that like your costs will change from market to market, right? So having other people in the same market you invest in is just so valuable.
Totally. And I forget who said it. I don't know if it's a famous quote or it was someone I just heard talking, but they're saying like not every dollar of rent is created equal, in that in every market you go to, just because it looks attractive on paper doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a rosy walk in the park. And so be very particular and do your due diligence around, okay, what does the market do? And what is the market doing? And why is this thing, both single family or multifamily, the price that it is, both from a rental perspective as well as a cost perspective? So if you're like, holy crap, I can go buy this $200,000 property and rents for $5,000 a month. Why is that? You know what? Did you find a unicorn? Maybe. And let's, go figure that out. Just because it's so good, it shouldn't scare you, but you should definitely put up a red flag and say, okay, well, let's investigate this further and find out why this is the way it is.
Right.
Awesome. Any other points, Emil, before we get out of here?
No, I think we actually covered this one pretty well in terms of our individual experiences, pros and cons of each. I think it was well covered.
Love a good humble brag. Awesome. Let's get out of here.
More so by you. You're just grilling me and I'm like,
Awesome.
I don't remember, Michael. It was 4 years ago.
You tried to block it out of your mind, forget about it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where you're like, you just put one foot in front of the other and, you're drinking from the fire hose. So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, but real quick. So last question for you before we get out of here. How has that investment panned out for you? That first single family?
My first one?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a cash cow. And if you hear crying in the background, that's my newborn baby Ian. Shout out Ian. So it's
my boy Ian.
You're
my boy Blue.
Baby boy. So when I bought it, I think the rent was somewhere around $900.
Okay.
And we've just had steady rent increases in the same tenant for 4+ years now. So I think now it's at like $1,050 or somewhere like that. Yeah. And just having the same tenant is so valuable. I love it. It's so nice. That's my favorite thing about single families. They seem to stay longer.
Love it. So what was probably a good deal at the time has now turned into, if you saw it today, a great deal, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think it was if I'm being objective, it was a decent deal at the time. And now it's become a pretty good deal for me.
Love time compounded with like good decisions. That should be like an equation. Time plus good decisions equals, I don't know, killer deals. However you want to call it.
Michael Einstein, the Einstein of real estate.
So dumb. Awesome. Well, let's get out of here, Emil. That was our episode, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging in there with us through all those rabbit hole sidetracked conversations. As always, if you like the episode, feel free to leave us a rating or a review wherever it is you get your podcast. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Happy investing.
See you later.